who's better between the Detroit Tigers and the Kansas City Royals, two teams in this division that have gotten off to a great start. For the Tigers, it was 5-0. They went out first series. They got the White Sox on the schedule. They took care of business. They squared off against the Mets. They won the first game. They waited about 48 hours with a bunch of rain. Got to play a doubleheader. Took the first one, nearly got another sweep. But in the ninth inning, the Mets walked them off. Pete Alonso hit a ridiculous home run in that game. Otherwise, I think the Tigers would have another win on their ledger there. And then this weekend, surprisingly, the A's got to the Tigers. So are you concerned at all about the A's coming into town and taking a series? How do you feel about the Tigers still through this first week and a half of the season?
Yeah, I think this was a really good start for them as far as who their opponent is, right? I think in the NFL, obviously, strength of schedule is something that you're really looking at last year's records to kind of figure out what's happening this year. We know baseball has much more variability, but I think there is something true to those teams that had success last year, facing them early on in the season in 2024, and how that can, really be a challenge. And, Detroit got a bit of a cushion there for sure. And so I think that they've made the most of it. It is, probably disappointing for a lot of Tigers fans. You're not able to do more against the A's. But even still, I think this is a good, solid start for so many of those young guys on that roster to really ease into this start of the season and say, okay, we might have something here. Let's just kind of do our thing. And maybe, just maybe, the guy at the end of the clubhouse, Javi Baez, starts to contribute something at some point.
I'll tell you, he looks lost. I mean, nothing new, but I hope that maybe in a winning situation, Javi can show up a little bit, because we see him in the World Baseball Classic. Like, it's still in there, where you get him into some big games and he can sort of rise to the occasion. Maybe if, in June, July, Comerica starts to get a big crowd going, maybe Javi can step up his game. Looking at the other team in this conversation, the Royals. 6-4 start for them. They lost to the Twins in the opening series and then to the Orioles in the second series, but played some close games against Baltimore. They hung in there. They got a game in each of those. And then they got the White Sox. 4-game series, and they handled business. A 4-game sweep. So they went from 2-4 to 6-4. We can't overreact to that series, but what I will tell you about the Royals, have you seen what their rotation has done two turns through at this point?
It's been the best in baseball, really. It has been. Matt Quatraro, one of those Tampa Bay Rays guys. Every franchise, every organization needs to go and poach some of those players. It's a big topic of conversation in Colorado. If they want to be serious, go to the teams that have been serious and that have been successful. Take from that organization. It will work. Mike Elias from Houston going to Baltimore. Matt Quatraro, a Rays guy. So yeah, that rotation has been great, and we've kind of been talking about it so far since the inception of this iteration of the show, about how good the Royals off season was, and these veteran pitchers, particularly the Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha, two guys that, hey, you're kind of ticketed for the bullpen, but the Royals are going to give me an opportunity, and I'm going to bet on myself. Lugo even opting out of his deal with San Diego, having that belief in himself. So that's nice to see those Royals guys coming through. Cole Reagan's kind of an afterthought for Texas, a cast off, if you will. Brady Singer finally putting it together after being a first round, hype guy. It's nice to see all of those guys having that success.
Yeah, this 5-man rotation has me believing in the Royals right now because, like you mentioned, I mean, one of the best ERAs in baseball, 2.53 team ERA. But you look at two turns of the rotation for each of these guys. Singer, he's allowed 1 earned run in 13 1/3, 14 strikeouts, 2 walks. That's a 0.68 ERA. Seth Lugo, 12 2/3, 1 earned run, 7 strikeouts, 3 walks, 0.71 ERA. Cole Reagan's 12 1/3, 16 strikeouts, 5 walks, 2 earned, 1.46 ERA. Michael Wacha, 12 innings, 13 strikeouts, 2 walks, 3 earned, 2.25 ERA. And then Alec Marsh, 11 2/3, 13 strikeouts, 2 walks, 3 earned runs, 3.09 ERA. The thing that jumps out more than the low ERAs, all those guys but Marsh, at least 12 innings pitched through 2 starts. There's some length right there that you're getting out of your starting pitchers to help a bullpen. I would think the Tigers have a better bullpen than the Royals right now, but if the Royals keep getting length from their starters, that bullpen's going to look even better because a rested bullpen is a very good bullpen.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's the bullpen that's going to be the suspect part for this roster right now, kind of going by closer by committee. I think they've had 3 different guys save games here within the first week plus of the season. So they'll have to figure that out at some point. I think that will be an easy question to answer once you get closer to that trade deadline, maybe even be a little aggressive and make a move in late June, which we've seen some teams be able to do. So they should be able to kind of fix that situation. But to your point, I mean, if the rotation is this solid, I think that's going to give confidence to the bullpen, make their job a little bit easier, and allow them to play through an area of weakness, which is the bullpen.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And I think you look at how these two teams in particular are going to have to win games. Like you mentioned, that's an easy thing to address. I think for the Tigers, the area that I'm looking at where I say I don't know if they stack with the Royals is that rotation. That's going to be a little bit harder to address. They're going to need their two free agent acquisitions to step up, and that's Jack Flaherty and Kenta Maeda. So far, not so good for either. Flaherty gave up 7 runs his first 2 starts. Maeda 9 runs given up first 2 starts. Skubal looks great as their ace. But beyond that, a lot of question marks. Those guys got to step up. And then you have gotten some good performances from Reese Olson and Matt Manning, but they were against the Mets. So I'm telling you, can't hit anybody right now. So I will say Olson, his stuff looks great. And he had a good season last year. Manning, he came up for a spot start. I don't know how much is going to be part of the rotation. Casey Mize, the stuff looked good as well, coming off Tommy John. So there are options. But I think with the Royals, there's a little more certainty in that rotation. The Tigers got to answer those questions, and they also might have to make a big swing at the deadline if they're in this mix.
Yeah, they do have a little bit of that depth, like you said, with guys that have some high upside, but there's volatility there with Mize just coming back from TJ. So the rotation and that can get costly too, as we know at the trade deadline, even for like a number 3, number 4 starter. Those guys can definitely eat up innings. But it's nice to look at the AL Central and not see like a total mess. Like there's definitely some promise going on there, and Detroit being bad for so long, we're starting to see some of those young guys finally come up and impact the roster, and the Royals are very exciting. That's
They
fun.
are. They are. And to close out the book on these two teams before we answer the question ultimately who's better, looking at the lineups, right? The Royals hit a lot of home runs this year. It's early, but they're the second most home runs in baseball right now. Just behind the Dodgers. They're ahead of the Braves. They have 14. Dodgers have 15. Braves, Red Sox, Astros all have 13. But you look at the lineups, right? So I look at the top 6 for the Tigers. Parker Meadows will be interesting to see how he established himself this year. Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, Kerry Carpenter, Colt Keith, and then Mark Canha and Gio Urshela coming up behind them. And then there's the Javi Baez question with Jake Rogers rounding it out. But there's a lot of really interesting pieces. And I kind of like the floor of what this Tigers team has. The Royals, there's also a lot of high upside guys, but guys that have also struggled for large stretches of their early big league careers outside, of course, of Bobby Witt. So what's kind of your take on these two lineups at this stage?
The bullpen question mark is really the one that just bothers me so much with Kansas City, but they are definitely, I think, the more exciting team. I mean, you're right. With all those Tigers hitters, some of them are going to be able to pull through and kind of match those projections and the hype that's been on them, being early round draft picks, and the rotation. Kenta Maeda, he's a pro. He's going to figure it out at some point. Same with Jack Flaherty, and the bullpen. The names are there, but we have seen rosters like this before, where hey, it looks like all of the pieces are there in general. I mean, you can probably in some shape or form compare the Mets roster last year to this Tigers team. Obviously, the superstars and the money that's doled out for the rosters are completely different in that capacity. But you go, hey, the pieces are here for it to get done. I just don't know if it will. I'd rather take my chances, I think, with the Royals and their high upside. I think it would be a much more fun watch to see them actually come to fruition and really be the better of these two teams.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. The rotation to me is the real selling point where I think the Royals are better, but these are teams that can absolutely hang in there, and they might just be defined by the deadline, depending on how aggressive they are, how much they're in the mix, and the pieces they add that could swing it. I think these are teams that are probably close to 500 for most of the year, maybe a little bit better than that. And those are typically wild card teams, or now those are teams in the AL Central that hang in the mix. And then you never know what happens once you get a little bit later on this season.